as you look at this matchup with Arkansas as the number 8 team in the country, I mean, when the season started, I don't think Arkansas, anyone thought they were going to be in the top 25, nevertheless top 10.
Yeah, it's happened a little faster than I thought, but I'm not surprised that it happened because anybody who knows Sam Pittman, actually the defensive coordinator for Georgia today had a great quote. Dan Lanning, he said, anybody who knows Sam Pittman loves Sam Pittman. And so he said there was a moment where, you know, his offensive linemen would just love up on him and love him so much, and now it's an entire team. So I think we've seen his chemistry and his lovability. You don't hear people say that often about a college football coach, but we do about Sam Pittman. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised he's getting it done, but it's really cool.
What's it like to see just how he's been able to do this so quickly? And you say he's a lovable coach, but he's also got this team playing like they believe they're the number 1 team in the country. And you think about it, this is a team that's got a lot of seniors on it who have been through the Bielema, the Chad Morris,
yes,
and now the Sam Pittman.
Yeah, we talked to a player this week, and he said, this is my 4th head coach. And I just thought, oh my gosh, these poor kids, they've been through a lot. And that's really hard to deal with in your college career. You never want that. But I really think they have 11 from Arkansas, but overall 13 super seniors. I kind of think that's what's special about their team. They have guys who are so committed, who changed their life to stay. And we're seeing that effort and that intensity and that accountability trickle through the whole team. So I think there's something special going on. Now listen, we're all excited and it's so cool to see Arkansas be this good. Georgia has a really good team, and Georgia has a really great defense. I did their first game against Clemson, and I walked away from there thinking like, holy bleep, right? So I know it's really exciting right now. It's going to be a hard game, but I'm excited to see Arkansas be good again. We love Arkansas football, and we need them to be good. I think it's good for everybody.
What do you think about this quarterback comparison between JT Daniels and KJ Jefferson?
They're totally different. I mean, there's no comparison in my mind at all, physically or skill-wise. They're very different guys. But both are banged up, and so I think that's a big storyline for the game tomorrow is which quarterback can make it through the game, which quarterback is able to work at a high level, because I think that's a huge story. Anybody else have questions?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
You just talked about that Georgia defense. I guess where does it, I know we're only through 4 games, but where does it rank in terms of great defenses that you've seen over the last couple of years?
Leaving the Clemson game, I kind of was like, oh my gosh, that's maybe one of the best defensive games, because I thought Clemson's defense was very good in that game too. But Kirby Smart said, we thought that was a really good defensive performance, but then it get 3 weeks removed and you see Clemson's offense really struggle. So how good was it really? And we don't really know. I'm not sure if they have been tested to the level of Arkansas yet. Arkansas has played Texas, who's a good offense. Arkansas has played Texas A&M, who they're having quarterback issues, but they're a good football team. They can really run the football. So I think this is a big test for them, because Arkansas's offense, Kendall Briles as a play caller, is very challenging. The tempo that he runs plays at is very challenging. So I think this might be the biggest test that the Georgia defense faces so far.
Holly, would you make the same argument that Arkansas hasn't played a defense like Georgia's, just as
for sure,
an offense like Arkansas's?
Yeah, I would agree totally. I would say this will also be the best defense that they face, and it all starts up front. I just think the defensive line for Georgia is elite. I've had some people call me or text me, and they'll be like, that Georgia defense is an NFL defense, and I'm like, I don't think they're wrong. I really love Nakobe Dean. I just think he flies everywhere. He's super smart. I had a phone conversation with him, and we're talking about the academic classes that he's taking, and his he's in a class, I'm going to forget the exact title, but it's building machines. And so at some point this football season, he's going to have to build a machine. And I was like, well, I have an idea. You could maybe model it after this Georgia defense. Maybe that's a good machine you could build. So I believe in this defense. They're really good.
This Treylin Burks and the talent that he is. Kendall Briles called him a generational talent over fall camp. He's been able to really perform this year so far.
Yeah, he said that to us as well on our calls, and his name came up a lot on our conference calls. Every week we talk with the head coach, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, and his name came up a lot from everybody. So I think he's going to be a player to keep your eyes on. I think he's important. He's got to play really well.
If JT Daniels and this offense decide to test this secondary for Arkansas early, Jalen Catalon and the leadership he has back there, how big is it for him to have a big game?
He's a perfect center fielder for them. He's kind of the quarterback in the backfield that makes all the calls, that talks to everybody, makes sure everyone's on the same page. So I think he'll have to play well, but he has been playing well. But I really think that their defense works in conjunction, because I think their linebackers have chemistry. And then one of the other things I thought is I was watching the Texas A&M game back, and every single frame that you see, it's 11 guys at the ball. I think that the swarming, chase the ball, attack mentality, it's defense wide. I think it's really shocking. I haven't seen this Arkansas defense play like that for a long time.
Last question from me is, Arkansas fans right now are on a high. This is a big deal after everything that they've been through. To say if they lose on Saturday, that the last 4 games were not a fluke. This was not an accident. This Arkansas team is good. They just lost to a very good Georgia game. What's the message kind of to Arkansas fans that, like, you could still go 9-3, 10-2. This Georgia game doesn't make everything else that's happened this year a fluke?
Yeah, one game doesn't make your season, right? Just like one win. What if Arkansas's only good win of the year was against Texas? That one win doesn't make their season either. But I think they're compiling wins in a way that's keeping people's attention. This is going to be hard. They're not supposed to win this game, but just don't tell them that. I think they really have a good belief in themselves. That's half the battle, and we'll see how Georgia's offense is able to operate. Is JT Daniels going to play or not? We don't really know at this point. He's being called a game time decision, so I still think there's a lot up in the air. And even if Arkansas wasn't able to get a win here, which would be difficult, doesn't mean they're not having a great season. They have put together some really great wins, and I think they'll keep winning.
Do you agree with the 18.5-point spread?
Okay, so I am not a gambling person nor a math person, so don't ask me those math questions. But I don't agree with that. I think it's going to be a closer ball game than that. But I also have learned through my career that people in Vegas usually know something, so sometimes they're right. I don't know. I guess the rooter for underdogs in me doesn't think it's going to be that big of a blowout.
Holly, what have you made of Georgia's running back situation this year? They've used 4 backs, but there just hasn't been that one lead guy. What have you seen from them on tape so far?
Yeah, I think they're still figuring it out a little bit, and some of that is a rhythm, and some of it is the kids getting their opportunity, and how do they make the most of it. I think they're all very different styles of runners. I think they're using them out of the backfield kind of as receiving threats a little bit more, so that changes the dynamic. So I don't think just because you don't have one good running back or one, I shouldn't say that, good running back, but one dominant or NFL caliber running back doesn't mean you don't have a good running back room. I think they have a good, deep running back room, and depth by committee is never a bad thing.
In terms of the Georgia defense, obviously there was a lot of talk about the front 7 going into the season and questions about the secondary. What have you seen through 4 games that maybe some of those questions have been answered in the secondary?
I think it's hard to tell because I think the pressure they're getting up front and the play of their linebackers is helping the secondary. I think people forget about that. Like, those guys are not often just on an island by themselves. It's pressure on the line. Is the quarterback under duress? Are they pressuring throws? I think that's been a big part of the success of Georgia's defense. That's helped this secondary settle in. Of course, they didn't have experience going into the season. I think Kirby told me they lost 8 guys, and I was like making my list before the Clemson guys of the 8 guys. Like, you don't see that kind of turnover in a secondary very often. But I think they're getting help because their front's so good and their linebackers are good ahead of them. So I think it's a very complimentary defense they're playing right now.
Arkansas has had a lot of success rushing 3 so far in their games. Do you think this is sustainable, and how do you think teams will counter this?
It depends on the front they're facing. Okay, this is a funny story because Sam Pittman recruited a lot of these kids on the Georgia offensive line. So he did say that he has been talking to his guys about the personnel. He knows what kids can do and what they can't do, right? He recruited them. He watched their tape. Now, he hasn't coached in the last 2 years, but that's kind of a fun little cat and mouse game on the front right now for the offensive line. Maybe they can't do it every game, but if they can get pressure with 3, think of what that allows them to do defensively behind that. So until they can't, do it, because I think it helps the rest of their defense.
How big of an advantage do you think that could be for Pittman and Arkansas, knowing Georgia's offensive line like he does?
I think it's a little bit of an advantage, right? Like, I know this kid can't step to his left, or I know this kid doesn't have a good whatever move, but they're different. These kids have grown up. They've been coached hard, and I don't know. I think it does help some. It helps me if I know certain things that you do or little tendencies you might have, but it's not the whole story. It's part of your story. So I think that's what we'll see Saturday.
Last week you made the trip out to cover the WNBA game after covering game day. Why was it so important to cover the WNBA and You had Sue Bird's last game. You had Diana. Continuing to dominate. Why is it so important for you?
Yeah, I actually just came here from a game last night as well. I had a Connecticut Chicago Sky WNBA game last night. I went to bed at midnight. I actually ended up having a sleepover at Rebecca Lobo's house because she lives closer to the airport, so I could get on my flight to get here to talk to you guys. So I hustled to get here for all of you, so thank you for showing up. But I'm dedicated to women's sports, and I'm dedicated. I'm exhausted right now. I've just done, I think, 5 events in 7 days. I'm exhausted. And then I threw in Utah Jazz Media Day because I'm going to start covering the NBA as well. So I'm really tired, but I'm happy. I don't know how to explain that, but it's like everything's worth it. And I had a really cool moment. So I'm doing Sue Bird's, we're pretty sure it's her last game, and I killed myself to get there. I drove all night, get there really late, and she's leaving the court. Diana Taurasi's getting ready for our interview, and Sue's going to leave the court. And I run over there, and I'm like, Sue, come back. And so they come back. We do this really kind of iconic, cool interview. But what I'm the most proud of is there was this really cool photo of them exchanging jerseys, swapping jerseys, that was on every media site in the world. And NBA.com, all the big sites really had this media picture. And I was like, that moment to help elevate those women and have their story and that photo, that photo will last forever as an iconic moment in our sport. And I know that my hustle made it happen, so I'm really grateful. The travel gods are smiling upon me. Knock on wood, because I also leave here tomorrow, drive to Atlanta, and I have a noon game in Phoenix tomorrow. So it's crazy right now, but I'm really dedicated to women's sports, and so I just make it happen.
In terms of the game day atmosphere, moving inside the stadium for the final hour, how exciting is that, to have 92,000 people there rather than, the normal crowd?
I think it's going to be really unique. I don't know, I'd have to ask the PR folks, but I don't know how often that happens or how unique that actually is. I think it's pretty unique. So I think it's going to be cool. I did see Kirby's press conference this week where he's like, get there early. We need that atmosphere. We need people to feel what it feels like to be here between the hedges. It's iconic, it's electric. So I think it's going to be pretty unusual. I don't know how many times Game Day's actually done that, but I think it's going to be really cool.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
We have to get a picture.